Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Mi-chael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Mi-chael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rakhma. Mi-chael is the author of So Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Mi-chael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Mi-chael and Jeanie Ryce.
To the brightness within you, and the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Mi-chael Ryce. Our call-in number is 646-200-4169. Press 1 if you want to talk to Mi-chael, and that'll put you in queue. The chat room is open. We don't have too many people out there. David and Dr. Tim are both online with us live, and so now we will turn it over to Mi-chael Ryce. Oh, and today is day 219 of our Memorial Day celebration.
Awesome. Well, thank you, sweetheart, and I'm sure that everybody is delighted to hear your sweet voice back on the show. We certainly appreciate your the space you hold and the input you have to what we're doing. And I suspect that Dr. Tim and David will both echo that for us.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thanks. I'm with you for 45 minutes. I actually have an appointment at the bank at 2 o'clock, so I'll be slipping out a little early, but I am here for the beginning.
Cool. Wonderful. Fabulous. Glad you're here, Jeanie. Well, do you have anything to share with us, Jeanie, from the last several days that you've been off the show? Your former husband passed away last week, and you unfortunately didn't quite make it there a half an hour earlier. If you hadn't had that layover in Atlanta, you'd have been there, but I know that it's been a hectic and busy time. I'm sure there's been lots of opportunities for forgiveness, so do you have anything to share with everybody who's been listening? Everybody's been inquiring about you regularly the last several days. So
yeah, it's actually, I had hoped to make it back here to be with him when he transitioned, but like you said, I missed it by 30 minutes. We had moved my flight up and did everything we could do to get me here earlier once we got the call on Wednesday that he was in the last hours. But there were actually angels in the airport. It was kind of amazing. I was sitting I had a 3-hour layover in Atlanta, and so I stopped to eat lunch, and I was sitting with my back to most of the people in the restaurant because I was just upset and I was breathing through it and trying to deal with it. And my waitress came over. She had already taken my order and everything, and in a little while she came over and she said, "Can I just hug you?" And so that was really sweet. And then after I ate and I walked around a little bit, and I went and I sat down at the gate waiting for them to say that we could board. And in the meantime, I kept getting phone calls from different people here in Bristol, Tennessee, and another lady just walked up, and she didn't even ask. She just walked up and hugged me. And then she sat down, and she said, "You look like you're in distress." And she said, "I can tell you're alone." And so she sat with me the rest of the time until we boarded the plane and just talked to me. And then and Mi-chael, if you can hear us, you just got disconnected.
Just keep breathing, Jeanie. We're
here.
We're here.
soon as the plane landed, I turned my phone on. And I had a message that he had just died. And they were holding his body until I got there. So I kind of broke down on the plane. I mean, we were just taxiing in. We hadn't even pulled up to the gate yet. And the lady sitting on the plane by me just reached over and put her arm around me. So it was just really sweet that 3 strangers were just there. And it's been a difficult weekend in a way, but then in another way it's been really priceless. I had made several trips to Bristol over the past year to help Ron finalize things and make arrangements and schedule his funeral and all of those things. And so a lot of it was already done according to his wishes. And so I just had to start making phone calls, and everything fell in place. The service was absolutely phenomenal. The support of the people were amazing. I mean, it's like out of Ron's family, not counting his children, we share a son together, and then he has 2 sons by a previous marriage. And he and I were together for 25 years, so, we had a lot of ties. But of his family, besides his children, there were 2 cousins and 1 niece showed up at the funeral. But he had created such a family of his own. There were, besides my family, which there were a lot of my family, my parents, brothers, all my brothers came in and their families. And then he had created a community of friends. And the chapel was packed that night for the funeral service. And if everybody that had come through the line had stayed, we wouldn't have gotten them in there. And then we took him to my family farm to burying there in our family cemetery. And it was like a 2-hour drive. And so we had told people, that we didn't expect them to go that far. There were 18 or 19 cars in the procession going for 2 hours. And then once we got there, there were other family members that had just gone directly there. It was just phenomenal to turn out. They did a military service with the 21-gun salute and the flag and it was beautiful, and the playing of the taps and the whole thing. It was just absolutely beautiful and honoring. Here we are on December the 31st, and the day was so pretty that we took our sweaters off even. It was so warm. And then afterwards, most of the people left to head back to Bristol. And my family stayed there. My mom and dad have a home over there. And so we walked up the road to their home, and my father said, well, he was going to go out in the garden. He planted a summer garden, and then he planted a winter garden. And I said, well, I'll go out and help you. And so I went out, and we were pulling turnips and cutting greens. And the next thing that we knew, there were like 18 family members out in the garden harvesting a crop. And it's like on December 31st, it was so beautiful. The sky was clear. It was warm. And all the family members are out there harvesting out of the garden. And it was like quite an awesome way to honor his life. And someone asked why Daddy planted so much, because the garden was like, we picked and picked and picked, and it didn't look like we'd even been in it. And somebody piped up and said, well, it's because Papa had seeds, and that's why we had so much in the garden. And he said, no, he said, it's probably so we could be doing this today. And it was just like an awesome closure. And then one of Ron's sons works at a restaurant, and his boss had actually reserved the whole back end of the restaurant in a private room so that we could all gather and bring in the new year.
We breathe with you, sweetie.
And that was awesome. And so it's been just a really sweet time. His son and his first wife and all of them went back to New Jersey Sunday afternoon. after we had another meal together, and then they all took off, and they had a 9-hour drive and had to go back to work. And so yesterday I couldn't do anything because it was still considered a legal holiday, and so today has been spent trying to call people, call the insurance companies, and I've got an appointment at 2 with the bank, and there's just so many things to close it out.
So we're here to hold this meeting. Thank you to everybody in the community for doing that.
Absolutely.
And certainly we, of light and love for Ron, that he goes with clarity straight to the arms of love. That's where he goes. He's blessed in doing that.
So that's the update here. Also hold the space when we finish at the bank. Ryan, our son, has he's shouldered a lot of responsibility, and he doesn't know how to let it go. I've tried to work on his body and work with him and do forgiveness sheets. So we have an appointment with an awesome. He's like I guess he falls in the category of a chiropractor, but he is awesome. Michael's been to him, so he knows he's phenomenal.
He's a real healer.
Yeah, he is. And so we have an appointment with him at 4 today for him to try to help Brian let go of some of the tension. So we've got a busy week this week ahead of us, and probably the next couple weeks. I'm trying to also get out of class for at least 3 more weeks, so that because I don't know that my mind can go in 2 directions right now. So anyway, a lot going on, but thank you all for holding the space.
All right, sweetie, we cherish you, and tell Ryan we hold the space for him. We love him, and we'll look forward to it, and we get to see him.
Awesome.
Thanks for sharing, Jeanie. It's wonderful to hear that family and community come together like that.
It's been absolutely amazing.
Ram Dass was quoted once as saying, "We're all just walking each other home."
That's nice.
Yeah, that's a truism. You know, there's a film out. Actually, there's a film that we've spoken about before called Joyous Noel, and it bespeaks the power of humans actually function as humans rather than as machines that have been programmed to beat and kill and to maim and torture each other.
Michael, you're breaking up.
We're catching about
Say
every
again?
other syllable.
We did not hear the name
really?
of the movie.
Okay, is that any better?
That last phrase was okay. We did not hear the name of the movie.
Okay, the name of the movie is Joyous Noel, and it shows the power in war. I mean, it's a true story based in World War I, where on the battlefield, someone sang the Christmas Carol, and the so-called enemy responded. And in the song that was written about this experience by a man who was on the battlefield, the bottom line is, on each end of the rifle were the same. It was a space where each person on that battlefield discovered their own humanity and the inhumanity they had been brainwashed to fear about putting an end to on planet Earth. And so if you watch that film, it will touch you deeply. And sadly, what happened was the Germans, who would not kill the Americans and the Brits and the Scots anymore, the French were sent to the front line to be slaughtered. And the Allies, who wouldn't kill the Germans anymore because they realized these are just people like us, that this is all a political game. They were dressed down by the bishop and they were sent off to shame because they wouldn't kill anymore. And anyway, there's a new film out that just kind of echoes it in a much milder way, but it's called War Horse. And it's a pretty touching story about a young man who raises a horse. And I'm not sure whether it's based in truth or not, whether it's a true story, but there's a very powerful scene where the horse is injured. And
you cut out, Michael, and maybe dropped altogether. Jeanie, are you there?
Yeah, he's still on, but Michael, we cannot hear you. We heard you say that the horse was injured, and then you disappeared.
Yeah. So two actual human beings show up. One from each side that are killing each other. Anyway, see the film. Time for human life to be restored to Earth.
Just breathing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Yes, I cried several times through that movie, and mostly about the way it depicts World War I again and the atrocities that we are so familiar with doing to each other. And unless armed with the knowledge of how the worksheet process works and the forgiveness tool itself, I don't recommend that movie to people, because it stirs up so much of my own pain and sadness.
I certainly understand it, and yes, it's one of those that you watch with worksheets in hand and do your process around it, and everything that it brings up. Each person in our invitation, each time we open the show is to be part of the team that changed the world, the team that changes this dynamic of war on planet Earth, and that means that we each, and the invitation is to each go into the process of forgiveness at least once a day, where if you've got some form of hostility or fear, you're willing to put an end to it, that you're willing to take responsibility for it rather than blaming someone else, and you actually step into the process of forgiveness. And our definition of forgiveness has nothing to do with the way the world teaches forgiveness. It has nothing to do with I let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. It's the tool with which, and it was taught 2,000 years ago and disappeared, it's a tool with which I tie myself if I'm in hostility or fear and blaming someone else. And I remove my hostility and fear so that I can function with the mind free of hostility or fear. And at that point, I now start to live a human life. And our definition in this work of a human life is just hold a newborn child. You know exactly what a human life is. The world goes to work instilling in us all the hostilities and fears that have been developed over the eons and robbing us of our human lives. We're here to support you in reclaiming your human life, to function as a human, and to hold as a standard for your behavior. If a newborn child wouldn't do it, you have no business doing it. It's a pretty high standard. There will be an end to rage, to grief, to pain, to trauma, to war, when we as an individual and our collective societies decide to take that level of responsibility and re-embody our human lives. People often say, how could a human being do such atrocities? A human being can't do an atrocity. Not possible. They talk about, oh, well, you're just human. It's your human weakness. No, it's not. That's all a fraud. That's all a lie. That's all been installed in you by the world to keep you out of your humanness. And so we're here to support you in reclaiming your humanness and functioning as a true human being. That's what we're here to support you in. And if you're not familiar with that conversation, on the right-hand side of the home page at whyagain.com, you'll find a link that says download worksheets. The first 4 links under that section will give you the whole forgiveness process. Our calling number, by the way, is 646-200-4169, 646-200-4169. If you have a question, a thought, you need some support with the worksheet, or any of the tools that we teach, have questions about anything we're talking about, we would love to hear your call. We'd love to hear from you. So, Jeanie, do we have any callers? Anything going on in the chat room to be aware of?
No one has their hand up on the switchboard. There are a lot of, one just popped up. So, yes, we do have a caller. There's a few people in the chat room, but they're basically all just saying hello and glad that they're here. But we do have a 970 area code. You're on the air. Who do we have?
Hey, Michael and Jeanie, it's Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Carrie. How's your drive?
Hi. It's good. And you know what? I seem to be in and out here a little bit. I might just pull off a minute and see if I can keep some good service with you, because I was waiting and it seemed to disconnect.
You've got a good strong voice, strong signal now.
Okay, good. I'm going to just pull over here and instead of continuing to drive and just talk from the side of the road.
Good idea. Cool.
Yeah.
So you're on your way back to Colorado from Florida. Long drive. Your time with Teddy went well?
I am. Pardon?
So your time with Teddy went well?
It went great. That was wonderful. I have something to run by you. There was another friend there who's staying over there near her who is a longtime friend. Actually, you know him also. And, God, it's just amazing since I started doing this clearing work how differently I am perceiving when an issue comes up with somebody. Now I'm standing a few steps back and observing it, rather than just being in the middle of it and reacting. But I still can't say I'm 100% sure of the best, most progressive way to handle these things. And as you know, I've been working with, parental disapproval issues from my most recent relationship. And so this person I happen to know had a dad who was really a high-level businessman but would come home and drink and then take sleeping pills and I think he must have been terribly verbally abusive, because this guy right now is at this place in his life where he's just so critical. No matter, whenever things come up, he's just extremely critical. I think his dad was really critical of him. So I went over there to visit, and I didn't. Go ahead.
I just say it's pretty typical.
It is. Oh, it's pretty difficult or typical?
No, typical.
Okay, typical of what?
Well, if you look at the situations and just kind of review this, the happenings the last couple of days in your mind, you'll notice that when there was no stress for him, he was probably relatively quiet and not much to say. But as soon as stress started to move, that is, he had goals involved in whatever was happening, that's when that hypercritical part would come up, and that's a reflection of the power person dynamic that
exactly. I mean, I had the realization that I'm triggering his power person, and there's ways he's triggering mine, because I start feeling this disapproval from him, and I can just feel it in my body, and my heart just kind of sinks, and I'm like, ugh. And so, Teddy and I actually went to, go ahead.
Isn't that awesome that here you are driving across the country and you run into the perfect person with the perfect matching bag of garbage to show you the next piece of your work? Isn't that awesome?
That is awesome. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, one of the tongue-in-cheek lines I like to deliver in the workshops is, you'll notice if you've taken the geographic year, it doesn't work very well, because when we take the geographic year, of course, we go along, and when we go along, we draw to us everything we need to continue the process of healing. And I think that's because the Creator and the creation don't like us being diseased, and so it sends us everything and everybody we need to heal everything that we need to heal.
Yeah, and I think especially when we put that in motion for ourselves, too, and that's our prayer, to keep clearing and keep healing. I'm sure we bring in people who are. So I guess my question is, and I ended up going to meet this person, and somebody else went with me, and it was just really apparent, this sort of subtle. I had gotten there, and I was really tired, and so I hadn't called them the day before, so they were relatively, I think, had taken that personally, that I hadn't called them the day before, instead of, thinking, well, maybe this person has other. It was a long journey just to get there and kind of leave my mom and leave her. There's emotional stuff with my mom, and so anyway, it was good. It was good to be moving the next step, and I felt like I left things in a really positive way. And but I just didn't have the energy for one more social occasion that evening when I got there, so which happened to be New Year's Eve. So then I just got up the next day, and for 4 or 5, over several hour period, he just didn't answer his phone. And then he finally answered it and said, well, I'm way out here in such and such a place. You can come and meet me if you want. And we had to wait in traffic to get there. And then when we got there, there was just at this really subtle level of disapproval that was, not, and I could feel it, and the other person who was with me could feel it. And so, and we discussed it on the way back, and I said, I really want to hold this person in love. I went home and read the commitment to the commitment statement to the other person, and we together talked about, the kind of things I've just shared with you, and having that understanding and kind of seeing it take place and asking, how can we hold the most love around the situation? How can I clear the things in me that are allowing it to even come up? And so I guess my question is, when you run into that kind of situation and you're getting this awareness, you're at this level of awareness where I am, where I'm working on this stuff all the time, how do you deal with, is there anything more productive I could have done with that person?
Well, the first, if we were in an intensive and that question came up, I'd turn to the board and I'd write on the board all of the above. And we have about 40, the worksheet is just one, the commitment is another, of about 40 identifiable tools that we teach. And so it would be all of the tools applied, and the idea of the work is, as one deepens their understanding and study of the work, is to apply different tools in different situations. And just like a carpenter, if the carpenter's going to frame a house, he doesn't use a ball-peen hammer. He uses a framing hammer. If he's going to drive a post in the ground, he doesn't use a framing hammer. He uses a sledgehammer. And so there are a number of different tools, and it sounds like, on an energetic level, that your stress was up, and so you would be radiating from your power person dynamics, and the tendency to be on an energy, it's like two tuning forks. When I hit a middle C tuning fork on the desk, the second tuning fork responds not by choice, but by simple energy dynamics. There's no choice involved in that process, but where the choice is possible is when those dynamics come up, that's when I can forgive or remove them. And so it might be a space of responsibility communication. And in a situation like that, responsibility communication might look, well, when I called you this morning, I called for several hours, and I was experiencing a little bit of frustration not getting through to you. And then, when we finally made contact, I sensed that maybe you had some frustration and I didn't call you yesterday. And so now I'm here, and it looks like stress is up, and I'm sensing that there's some kind of a wrinkle in the energy. There's something we need to process. And what I'd like to do is to connect in a loving space and deal with what's going on for me in terms of this frustration. Do you have any suggestions, anything you can think of that might support that? So they might go into the same place of processing and connectedness and support and go, yeah, well, whatever they have to say. And or they might go into a tirade and how it's all your fault and why didn't you and you should. And that will give you the chance to fully appreciate your disapproval and to breathe and to hold a space of love for yourself to work through all that old energy around being disapproved of by Dad at every turn. And so...
Yeah, because this person does tend to go into these really, really pretty vicious tirades. And I've been afraid of inciting any of that. And, yeah, my dad used to go into pretty vicious tirades, So I've been afraid of even trying to broach what it is that they're so upset about, which is just some hallucination, because there's hardly even been any interaction. It's that, like you said, it's the stress-based power person stuff.
So the other aspect of it might be to simply offer one of the tools. Maybe offer a copy of the book, or go to the website, or maybe to take them into still point breathing. Hey, I've got a tool that really softens things. It looks like they're a little uptight. How about if would you like to do this? Would you like to breathe? And something simple that might open the space for a shift in energy to occur.
Okay.
And, of course, using the commitment. That speaking of the commitment is extremely powerful at softening the energy. I know we did a Healing Through Relationships workshop a few months back, and there was a gentleman there that talked to Jeanie when she was at the tape table and was sharing that they were on the verge of divorce, he and his wife, and the energy was pretty heavy duty. And Jeanie said, well, here, why don't you take this and a copy of the commitment, and why don't you just start to read it to your wife? Well, this guy called her, I think it was just a couple of weeks later, and he said, I don't believe this, but it's like my wife and I are on our second honeymoon. The whole idea of divorce is gone. We're enjoying our relationship. We're enjoying each other. We're having a blast together. He says, I've been reading that commitment every day. And Jeanie said, well, when you read it to her, does she read it back to you? And he was kind of like in a startled response. He said, well, what do you mean, read it back to me? Well, when you read it to her, does she read it to you? She says, he doesn't know I'm doing this. He was going into another room and reading to her. She didn't even know what was going on. And it shifted and changed their relationship. So that's certainly a very powerful tool to use.
Yeah, it's amazing how I just feel the bottom falling out of my world. This person has progressively been doing this over the last few weeks. It's a friend who's visiting in the area and camping, and it's gotten to be so almost every time I'm around him, he's speaking to me in this really condescending, kind of derogatory way, and sort of with disgust and disdain, and I'm just like, whoa. And and as I've been working with these tools, I've been asking myself to, clear what's inside myself that's being brought up, and then trying to figure out how to, I'm really afraid to approach him on suggesting a healing process, because he's got to
So then your next worksheet, and this is going to take you right back to your power person, and probably the terror that you had in speaking up to your power person. So your next worksheet would be a worksheet on fear of speaking up to this person, and that will probably just naturally lead when you go through that worksheet. Pardon me. It's kind of like the Hydra. You cut off one head and another 5 heads appear. So as you go through that worksheet of the fear of speaking up to him, then up comes the fear of speaking up to Dad, maybe to Mom, maybe to relationships you've had throughout your life, and each one of those will produce a different result until you come to a point of total confidence when speaking up to a male who's being condescending to you, where you'll stand in your human beingness, and there'll be nothing based in fear to be resonated in you. And at that point, you'll create a totally different interaction. It's kind of like one of Jeannie's favorite examples she uses with people a lot is a game of tug of war. If you play the old game of tug of war that you've played with somebody all your life, then that game's going to go on. But if one person drops the rope, then the other person's game's got to change.
Right.
The rope is to forgive as to your fear. And the simple presence of your fear will set up a literal energy. I think I've shared with you the work I did about 30 years ago with Marcel Vogel. He was a 23-year junior scientist from IBM and had a camera in his laboratory with which to take a picture of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think of thought. Well, every energy pattern that we send up communicates something about us, and it communicates what we're expecting and what we're going to create. And so if I have this fear, then I'm sending out a psychic megaphone message. I'm sending out a high energy wave that says, okay, I need somebody who can terrify me and intensify this fear, because, of course, it's not mine. It's all your fault. And there's your next worksheet and the next layer of healing for you. And isn't it awesome that, you know, you're just passing through town with a few minutes to visit with somebody, and you get that gift of, okay, now I know the next piece of processing I need to do.
Michael,
Cool.
I'd like to offer something.
You know what? I'm gonna sign off here. Is it possible to unplug me from being in the conversation, but I can still listen? Or should I call back in?
Yeah.
No, you can stay on.
No,
Okay.
Jeanie can do that, and you can just stay on, and Tim's got something to share with you.
Yeah, can I listen, and then I'm going to get back on the road here?
Sure.
Yes, I will
Okay.
click you off, so we can't hear you now, Carrie, but you can hear us.
So, Carrie, the thing I would offer relates to what Michael is saying. And so many times I fall into the trap of thinking I'm person A, the person in your situation who has the rage is person B, and my friend who's got nothing to do with this is person C. And so person A and person C show up, and they witness person B having the rage. And person A and person C both agree that they didn't do anything to trigger that. And at the conscious, at the physical, at the auditory level, you may be absolutely right. But at the energetic level, if my fear is resonated from my power person dynamics, and the person who is raging has a similar dynamic to my power person or to one of my unresolved issues from the past, and that's the trigger for me, I can be completely unconscious about how my fearful energy has been triggered. And that fearful energy in me is like the psychic megaphone Michael is talking about. It radiates the energy, the unresolved issues in person B, and they get triggered. So my very presence, even if I'm smiling, even if I'm trying to greet the person normally and naturally in a relaxed way, my very presence may carry an energy that triggers the other person. In this case, far from my needing to fix the person who's raging, what I need to do is go in and forgive, dismantle, and remove the energy of fear, the power person dynamics and the triggers within me, and I need to stop myself from my tendency to listen to my friend, person C, who looked at the interaction from the outside and said, well, gee, Dr. Tim, you didn't do anything. And that person just raged. Right. If I have any response of fear or discomfort in reaction to a person raging, there's my work. My fear and my discomfort are what I need to dismantle from my system.
And that's my silent cause, the thing that I actually had started a book a while back, I never did complete it, entitled Silent Scream. And all of these old pains and rages and fears and griefs are literally energetic screams, and we walk into somebody's space, and the truth is, if we have in us a raging scream on an energetic level, the person who has the matching bag of garbage hears our raging scream unconsciously and tends to respond out of that. And you can tell that happens when you walk into somebody's space totally committed to being loving, nurturing, and caring, and all of a sudden you find yourself functioning like a mad banshee. What happened? You responded to that person's silent scream. And as we each clean up that screaming, terrified, raging, grief-stricken part of us, when we take responsibility for that, we're going to put an end to conflict. When we put an end to conflict, individually and collectively, we'll get to the point where we will create an energy vortex that will put an end to conflict on planet Earth, that will put an end to war. And that in the ancient teachings was referred to as the second coming, that when the active presence of the mind of love, you remember a fellow named Paul spoke of of the work was to be of like mind with Christ. Christ not being a religious figure, but being one who lived out of the mind of love. So when that happens through us, that's the personal coming. When that happens to us and through us, we create a different dynamic in our worlds. And that's what we are talking about with all of this work, is how to create that different dynamic and how to support each other in doing it. So I'm in full agreement with you, Dr. Tim. Anything else to share, Tim, around that?
Oh, I think it's just one of my biggest challenges is, because I so like to be right, that if I have friends or family with me, yeah, I do. And if I have friends or family with me...
I've never met anybody like that before, Tim. That's the first person I've ever run into.
Your sarcasm is showing. And the tendency, the temptation is for me to listen to them when they tell me, no, you were right. You didn't do anything, and the other person really has a problem. And that may be true. The other person may have a whole series of problems, but their problems are nothing I can do anything about, especially if I've been triggered to having any kind of a negative reaction get stirred up in me. And my work then is to focus on my negative energy and dismantle it.
Yeah, and you make a really powerful point that we see oftentimes in communities. Sadly, what one person who doesn't want to be responsible for their part in a dynamic does is it goes and gathers everybody else that agrees with them and becomes a gossip fest that is willing to tear someone apart in order to make sure that everybody knows that they are the one to blame. And, living in a community without gossip is virtually unheard of in our culture because everybody wants, as you say, wants to be right and, runs off and will tend to join with others who will agree with them. And then all of a sudden it's, you got 10 people blasting away at one and each one of them living out of their own insane minds. It's definitely an interesting dynamic.
Well, I would just want to share something you just triggered for me is in my work on advanced group therapy work, I was privileged to work with a master group therapist and researcher, and they studied the patterns of group development, all kinds of different groups, and they pinpointed different stages of group development that can happen as a group moves and grows and matures. And it's not too surprising that most groups stop at the first stage or two and never make it past the second stage to the more developed, productive levels. And one of the keys to getting past the initial stages is to identify when someone has been labeled as a scapegoat. And the death of the group will be to identify somebody who's the troublemaker and get rid of him or her. And it just kills the group because in that group dynamic, the person who is beginning to be seen as the troublemaker is just somebody who is energetically responding to the needs of the group and talking about the problems and the needs and the fears and the angers of the group that no one else will talk about. And they become the person, well, if we could just get this person out of here, if we just didn't have that angry person there or this person who's always breaking down and crying and disrupting what we want to do, then the group will be able to move on. And they get rid of that person and the group collapses.
Right. And the same in family systems. Everybody who plays the game of denial and dissociation will find one family member. I know I worked with a family back in Atlanta about 30 years ago, and they had a son with cancer. And they had been all over the world trying to find an answer to this young man's cancer. And when they came to me, we started to work with some of the family dynamics and the role that this young boy played in the family. And things started to open and communication started to occur the system, the whole family system was starting to change, and the boy was getting better, and they removed him. They just disappeared because, of course, everybody who has a scapegoat, they'll get together and behind someone's back. The way you can tell whether this is happening or not is, do you do it behind someone's back? If you got something to say, like one of the rules we have at Heartland, if you got something to say about somebody, say it in their presence. Bring them together. But when people get together and this tuning fork that holds this negativity, this issue, well, I had a brother who was this way and beat up on me, so now I've got this person who's now the one who beats up on me. Well, then I go find somebody who will agree with me that this person's beating up on me, and it'll just grow and grow and grow into an insane level. And the chaos stage of healing and community is where people actually can bring those insane dynamics out that they have somebody to blame for, and instead of gossiping and nattering and doing little, just little signals like, that look of, see, that's the way they are. Duh. If you've got to look and you look at someone and you go, yeah, that's the way they are, I knew that about them, you know who that's true about? It's true about you. It's not true about them. Now, it may be true about them, but what you can know for sure is that it's true about you. If you're not functioning out of the active presence of love, if you're functioning out of that, they are really the problem, look at what they did again, then that's a way to destroy a community. You're right on track.
Michael?
Yes, sweetie.
I'm going to have to go, so
okay.
I will leave the line open. There was a question in the chat room. They wanted to know, in the worksheet, the part where it says, how have I violated that goal?
Right.
They want to know how to use that part of the worksheet and what's the purpose of looking at why you violate the goal that you want from someone else.
Cool.
And then
we
Tim's
hold
going
you
to take over.
And Ryan in a blessing for his appointment this afternoon, and we cherish and honor you, and I'll talk to you later, sweetie.
All right. Thank you all.
Bye, Jeanie.
Bye-bye. So if you're on the show and you're not sure what we're talking about with that step in the worksheet, you can go to the website, whyagain.com, and on the right-hand side there's a link that says download worksheets. The second link down will give you the actual worksheet process. There are a total of 4 links that will tell you the whole story of how to do the forgiveness process. And so you're welcome to go to the site to do that. Also, of course, next week on Saturday in Boca Raton, Florida, if you're in that area of the country, we'll be doing Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Then we'll go through the whole, pardon me, my mistake. We're doing communication. Did you hear what I think I said? Next Saturday evening in Boca Raton at a place called the Heart Painter Studio. Then on Sunday afternoon in Fort Lauderdale at a place called CSL. The flyer is on the website. We'll be doing Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And a whole series of free workshops, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then Saturday, there is one fee-based workshop we do. We travel, and we'll be doing MindShifters and Still Point Breathing. And we'll be traveling all around the state. So if you're around Florida or you want to come and experience things on another level, that's a way to do it. It looks like we're probably going to do a codependence to interdependence intensive residential starting on the 6th of April, Easter weekend. So people who've got the some Easter time off can have less time off of work to come and do an intensive. And it's a residential intensive right on the water with the dock in Central Florida, a place called Palm Coast. So if you're interested in that, drop us a note. But that step in the worksheet, it comes about in step number 6. And in step number 6, after you've collapsed the projections, what happens is you're looking at how you feel. Usually there's a shift in feeling. And then and sometimes the shift is into a deeper intensity of what you started with at the beginning of the worksheet, and sometimes it will shift totally into something wonderful, and that's cool. Then the second part in that step number 6 is, what do I see about the situation that I'm working on here? And most people at that point, having collapsed their projection, have now opened the dissociated mind, and they can see the part they played in it. Then the last step in number 6 is to be willing to look at where I violated the goal that I held for whoever I'm doing the worksheet on. So let's say that, maybe Carrie we could use as an example. So if Carrie's dealing with this fellow who's got all this rage and she wants him to speak to her lovingly, gently, respectfully. So the way Carrie would use the worksheet in that circumstance that we worked with earlier in the show today would be to look at when have I spoken with a sharp voice in abusive tones or out of rage at someone else. And so I'll start to review, well, gee, I can remember when Dad used to yell at me. I can remember that time when I was 13, and I just raged right back at him in his face. And I can remember with my spouse, and we had a big issue going on, and I just broke down. I lost it, and I started to scream and rage. And then I can remember that time when I looked in the mirror, and I was so angry with myself. So they'd be the ways that you can use that particular tool. So to look at, the fact that when you have an issue around a particular goal, usually it's a goal that you too have violated. And a lot of the energy of pain and trauma around that goal comes from the times you violated it. Because when we, say in that particular case, when we rage, one of the things that the world hasn't taught us is we get the original, they get the carbon copy. Why does the rager need a fifth of scotch to get quiet? Because they've so violated their own tissue structure when they turned at someone enraged that they have to anesthetize the pain they've caused themselves. And of course, that was yesterday's show where we invited people to be willing to look at and become a space where we heal the insane dynamics that have happened around our planet around alcohol. So that would be how to use that particular tool. And Dr. Tim, is anybody in the chat room responding to that? Is that adequately?
That was a very good explanation. To my mind, no one's asked about that. But Nene is asking, what do we do if at the end of the worksheet our feeling is worse than when we began?
Then we congratulate ourselves for being willing to go to a new depth of our own dissociated state and do the next worksheet. When they asked Yeshua that question, how many of these darn worksheets do we have to do anyway? And their question was, is 7 of them enough? His response in Aramaic was no, 77 times 70. The worksheet that I shared yesterday that I did on New Year's Eve around someone who violated another with alcohol led me to a whole series of things going to the next level of how my family system was around alcohol. And then that led me to a new depth, to a new level. And if you want to tap into yesterday's show, I don't know whether Jeanie's got the archives up or not. Probably not. It'll probably be a day or two before she gets the space to do that. But once yesterday's show is archived, you can jump on it and give it a listen, because then what it went to on the next level was the pain and suffering, asking myself the question and doing some worksheets around what has happened in my family system, what do I carry in my genetics around the abuse of alcohol. And that just opened up the whole floodgates of how much suffering and how much pain has gone on planet Earth around alcohol, and people who play the game like they have a right to drink and anesthetize themselves with alcohol and call that having fun and enjoyment. So, if you listen to yesterday's show, and I think you were on the show yesterday, Nene, that's exactly what happened in that worksheet around this person who put someone else in danger by serving them alcohol, who that someone else had just about been murdered over alcohol abuse. And so that's how that progressed for me. That's what opened for me. And so you just jump, as I said before, the Hydra in Greek mythology was this creature that when you cut off its head, 5 more heads sprouted out. And it's kind of, as you do your work, you'll cut off one head, you'll go through one process, and you'll touch into what's at the root of it. And ultimately at the root of these extreme, insane dynamics in the way people treat, what appear to be humans treat each other in terms of the abuses in relationships, the cheating, the rage, the grief, the pain, so much of that is based in alcohol. I guarantee if you look at the last 5 wars we were in, that the people who made the decisions to go to war had a good drunk the night before within a few days of it, and or were drinking when they actually made the decision to go to war. And when you start to recognize that, then, that's the depth of pain there is on planet Earth. And for me personally, that's what I was dealing with on New Year's Day, was the depth of pain inflicted by war. And that was through a worksheet that appeared to be, about an isolated incident that had nothing to do, of course, with the pain of the world around war. So, Nene, does that get your question answered?
Yes, Nene says thanks. That means I'm on track. And the person who asked about the other question about why am I asking about how I've canceled the goal said, yes, thanks for the explanation of violation. It sounds like it brings up empathy and compassion within us.
Yeah, that's what I've found in my worksheets to a great degree, is that it opens that space of compassion when I start to see, oh, damn, I've done the same thing. and you can go back, and this isn't a new principle on planet Earth. Go back to the ancient scriptures, and they said in Romans 1, beware you who judge another, for that in which you judge another, you have been guilty of practicing. It's one of the things that makes judgment attractive. I can keep dissociated from my own judgment of myself by judging someone else for it. If I haven't done it myself, the tendency is going to be to have no judgment of another when they do it. The tendency is going to be to stand as a space of love and compassion. And when you process out the times you've done it, then what's left is your human life. And human life heals people. The active presence of love brings healing, and that's, whether it's the family dynamic or the international dynamic, when we get enough people who are living out of their true human beingness rather than a set of programs based in hostility or fear, then everything starts to change, and that's what we're here to do, is to change everything on the planet. And, of course, we're entering 2012, which the Mayans said was going to be the time when there would be a shift of energetic support on planet Earth. The support for power and a lack of integrity for control would disappear, that supportive energy would be gone. And they predicted this thousands of years ago, that 2012 would be the year where support for integrity and ethics would show up. And we're here to support that becoming the predominant resonant frequency on the planet, integrity and ethics. That's the whole idea of our work, and that's what we're here to support and develop a community over. And I certainly, with this going into the new year, would love to express my appreciation for everybody who's part of this community as it develops and it grows, and everybody that is introduced to this community, and the awesome support that each one offers to the others. By the way, if you're trying to ask a question, Jeanie has left the switchboard, and so that we won't be able to take any more callers today, but we certainly can. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but we certainly can answer questions in the chat room. But my appreciation, while we're down to about 45 seconds, so my appreciation to each and every one of you for your participation, for your willingness, and for every worksheet that you do, every piece of healing that you do. Millions yet unborn will be touched by the work that you're doing, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing it. David, do you have a greeting for folks with this closing out the new year? I know that we had talked about, and it just comes to my mind now, of getting into the next level of the 5 worksheets a day and making a new commitment. So maybe tomorrow we can open the show with that conversation. Do you have a thought for us, David, real quick? We've only got a few seconds. I apologize. Okay, well, I guess David's mute button's on or he's disconnected, so we hold the space for you to have the best year yet of your eternal life. Blessings and thanks. Bye-bye. Actually, I guess with Jeanie not being available to hit the close button, we actually don't have our outro, so we do have a few more seconds to share the space with you and appreciate you for all the work that you're doing, the learning that you're doing, the healing that you're doing. We offer you a blessing and support in all your work. Have the best year yet of your eternal life. Take care. Bye-bye.